1968, in Tokyo. Amidst a heavy downpour, the Neon Trust Bank's manager felt uneasy. Over recent months, threats had been made against his life and those close to him. Another in a series of letters arrived at his home, this one demanding 300 million yen, under the threat of dynamiting his residence. This particular letter was crafted from letters snipped from film magazines. The authorities were alerted and kept vigilant watch over both his home and the bank. Yet this did little to calm the bank manager, who voiced his anxieties to the staff at his branch. In Japan, however, duty calls regardless of circumstances, and the bank manager proceeded with his responsibilities. He dispatched 4 employees in the company vehicle to the Toshiba factory for a routine deposit. Shortly after their departure, the sound of police sirens filled the air, and as fate would have it, they were beside a prison when a police officer dramatically stopped them. Leaping from his bike to deliver the shocking news, the manager's home had been attacked, resulting in injuries and possibly worse. Despite the police's surveillance efforts, the assailant had managed to fulfill his threat. However, the ordeal hadn't concluded. Further threats emerged. The bank, along with its employees, especially those who had earlier departed in vehicles prominently marked with the company's logo for banking tasks, became specific targets. The necessity to inspect their vehicle arose. An officer positioned himself beneath the car for a thorough examination. But before he could complete his inspection, signs of smoke and flames beginning to billow from the car caught an employee's attention. The imminent threat of an explosion sent the officer scrambling for safety. In a frantic dash, everyone sought refuge beyond the prison's barriers, anticipating the blast. Yet, the anticipated explosion never occurred. Turning their gaze back, they were met with the absence of both the company vehicle and the officer. Questions arose whether the officer had moved the vehicle to a safer location. Baffled, they reached out to the Neon Trust Bank for clarity. Much to their comfort, they were greeted by the voice of the bank manager, confirming his safety and well-being. Remarkably, all was well. The manager's home remained intact. As the rush of adrenaline subsided, the reality of their situation became apparent. The events that unfolded were the culmination of months of meticulous planning by the perpetrator, who, under the guise of a police officer, had successfully absconded with the intended bonus payments for 523 Toshiba employees, amounting to the demanded 300 million yen or $6 million. Scattered at the scene were various objects, including a warning flare likely used by the impersonator beneath the car to simulate the threat of dynamite. Despite the discovery of 120 pieces of evidence at the scene, a quantity that under normal circumstances would aid an investigation, these were deliberately left to confound the authorities. This strategy proved effective. Decades later, the mystery of this heist remains unresolved. Many regard this as the most audacious heist in the annals of Japanese crime. It was a feat achieved without a single life lost or a drop of bloodshed, executed flawlessly by an individual. The heist's success wasn't just about the money stolen. The significance of a bank robbery can be measured in various ways, each with its own remarkable story. Consider the event of May 15, 2016, in the wee hours of 5 a.m. A Tokyo 7-Eleven ATM saw a withdrawal of 100,000 yen, approximately $880, the maximum withdrawal limit. At first glance, this might not appear extraordinary. However, imagine this act replicated 14,000 times across Japan within a mere 2-hour window. That's precisely what transpired, culminating in the theft of 1.4 billion yen, or about $13 million, from ATMs. This operation wasn't a feat of digital hacking. It was executed physically, in person. While it might suggest the involvement of a large, coordinated group, the sheer volume of transactions within such a brief period raises questions about the feasibility, even for a large group, in comparison to other significant heists. The largest known group involved in a single robbery would seem incapable of such a feat without extraordinary means. Introducing a larger team would typically complicate matters, akin to having too many cooks in the kitchen. Yet, upon reviewing security footage from each targeted 7-Eleven, interestingly, only 7-Elevens were hit. The police discovered that, in this instance, more cooks actually proved advantageous. The operation didn't involve 50, 100, or even 200 individuals. It was carried out by 600 people using counterfeit credit cards. A stark contrast to the lone wolf of our initial story. Given the vast number of participants, it's speculated that a major criminal organization was involved. However, to date, despite the extensive involvement, no significant arrests have been made. Switching gears to a brief tale from Kobe, on August 7, 1994, 540 million yen was stolen from Fukutoko Bank. While the amount is noteworthy, what sets this incident apart is the robber's gesture 10 days post-heist. The bank received a note expressing gratitude for the bonus, claiming it would sustain them for life. This act of politeness was unprecedented, even considering the Japanese cultural emphasis on courtesy. The last 3 cases shared a common thread of meticulous planning and execution without loss of life. However, the next story diverges significantly. We travel back to January 26, 1948, in Tokyo. where a man in his 40s entered an Imperial Bank branch just before closing. The bank was occupied by 16 individuals, including customers and staff, capturing everyone's attention. He introduced himself as a government health inspector, allegedly dispatched by the U.S. occupation authorities, this being the post-war period. With Tokyo under American occupation, he claimed to be there to administer inoculations due to a purported dysentery outbreak in the vicinity. In the aftermath of the war, Tokyo was grappling with the threat of disease, making the populace unsuspecting of a man claiming to be a health inspector, especially since he wore an official government armband. He administered a pill and a liquid to 16 individuals, who consumed them without hesitation. Shortly thereafter, they began to suffer and collapse in pain. With the victims incapacitated, the imposter health inspector swiftly collected all the available money and left the scene. Tragically, 12 out of the 16 individuals, including a child, succumbed to the effects of the cyanide-laced solution they ingested. The audacity of using such a method for a robbery was shocking, and peculiarly, the perpetrator left a business card at the scene bearing the name Shigeru Matsui, supposedly from the Department of Disease Prevention. This detail seemed to corroborate his disguise as a health official. However, the real Shigeru Matsui, an actual employee of the Department of Disease Prevention, was quickly exonerated by the police after proving his alibi. Matsui disclosed to the authorities that he had exchanged business cards with 593 people, a common practice in Japan for sharing personal contact information. This clue provided the police with 593 potential suspects, which they eventually narrowed down to 8, including Sadamaki Hirasawa, a painter. Hirasawa was unable to produce Matsui's card, claiming it was stolen along with his wallet. Despite his claim of being pickpocketed, the police were skeptical. Hirasawa's inability to provide an alibi, combined with his history of bank fraud and the discovery of a sum of money similar to what was stolen, raised suspicions. His identification by eyewitnesses as the assailant and his subsequent confession led to his arrest and conviction for the robbery and murders, resulting in a death sentence in 1950. However, doubts about Hirasawa's guilt emerged post-trial, as his confession was allegedly coerced through torture, and only 2 eyewitnesses had identified him. Some speculated that the money found in his possession might have come from his sideline of drawing erotic art, a detail he likely withheld to protect his reputation. Moreover, the military-grade cyanide used in the crime was something Hirasawa would have had difficulty obtaining, leading to theories that the real perpetrator might have been a former member of Unit 731, a secret military unit known for its chemical and biological warfare research. The Minister of Justice and his successors harbored doubts about Hirasawa's guilt, preventing the execution of his death sentence. Hirasawa remained on death row for 32 years until his death from pneumonia in 1987. Despite the official verdict, the case remained controversial, with many believing that the real criminal was never caught. This event, which occurred in 1948, precedes a new form of heist that emerged 7 decades later.